Your brain on climate.
Right, have you ever caught yourself walking along, looking up at the sky and thinking, there's an aeroplane up there? And going, what the bloody hell is that doing up there? Because we completely take it for granted, right, don't we? But like metal tubes with hundreds of people in them, pootling along up there in the sky, minding its own business, 30,000 feet above our heads, where metal tubes should not be. Like, that we can understand as humans how to build that is one thing. That we can actually do it is another. That humans actually sit in planes, when you think about it, it's quite remarkable. But they do. Every day, millions of people around the world strap themselves into their seat and they soar happily into the lower stratosphere. We sit there eating our plasticky meals, watching our plasticky films, suspending the whole enterprise in disbelief, held up there only by two wings, a great deal of clever physics, an absolute shitload of fossil fuels, a vast amount of clever computing power, and ultimately pressing some buttons and saying nice things on the telecom, a human pilot.
Roger. All right. Request vector. Over. What?
Flight 209er, clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Now there's someone that our society reveres. Airline pilots. In our cultural imagination, they are proper adults. They got large brains, they got square jaws, they are unflappable under pressure, and they've got a quiet, grown-up capacity for willingly taking responsibility over directing these tin cans full of life miles up in the sky. It ain't easy being a pilot. You got to train for years, then you got to learn for more years on the job, and finally, if you're lucky and you stick at it enough, you get command. And then, and probably only then, do you get to press the bing bong machine on the intercom and say to people in your reassuringly calm voice, being a pilot is well paid, it's glamorous, it's adventurous. And so why, in God's name, would you quit?
I couldn't carry on. I couldn't sleep. I was, I was really starting to shrivel up, I think. The increasing belief in my head that flying is not only doing a lot of harm to the planet, but it's unnecessary, unjustifiable harm.
That is Joel Walker. Joel quit being a pilot a year ago. He quit because he could no longer bear the screaming dissonance in his head. Last week, me and Joel went for a walk in the woods, and Joel told me his story about how he always cared about climate change, but he wanted to be a pilot. He was a sodding pilot. So for years, he put to the back of his head that his industry, his job, was a huge contributor to global warming. And this is a masterclass in something we've talked about a lot on here, cognitive dissonance, that human capacity that we've all got to believe at least two things to be true at once and to be pretty skilled, normally, at silencing the one of those things that gives us the most discomfort. And so that is what Joel did for years. As the glaciers that he flew over visibly melted and the smoke rose from forest fires caused by climate change just below his cockpit window, Joel pretty much silenced that cognitive dissonance, shutting down that urgent, insistent bit of his brain that what he was doing was wrong, that climate change is important and flying planes does not help. Joel got his flying stripes, he got command of the plane, and he kept on flying. Until one day, he just couldn't anymore. Would you think of yourself as an inspiring chap?
No, I don't. I certainly wouldn't like to think of myself that way.
You're inspiring loads of people. I find what you've done inspiring.
Well, thank you. I didn't do it to be inspiring. I did it out of self-preservation, really. It just felt too uncomfortable to do anything else. And yeah, in a way, I hope that what I've done might have some positive influence. And if it can, then I'm really keen to try and exploit that. But the thought of being inspiring is quite scary, really.
Oh, Joel's wrong about that, because to me at least, he is proper inspiring. Now, his story, which you're going to hear in this episode, is sad in places, but it's deeply relevant for anyone who's thought about whether they're living their life in a way consistent with their values, which is like most of us, or anyone who's ever shoved climate change and our entanglement with it to the back of their heads so that they can go about daily life without thinking about it too much, which is probably all of us. So come along with me and Joel for a walk in the woods on this episode of Your Brain on Climate, the show about human brains versus the climate crisis.
Your brain on climate.
So welcome to Your Brain on Climate. I'm Dave, and quickly, just before we get going with the chat with Joel, the usual housekeeping. This show is a labour of love and it costs money to do. So if you like what you hear and you want to keep this show on the road, please chuck in a couple of quid at www.patreon.com/yourbrainonclimate. I am so grateful to the support of everyone who chips in. It helps me to pay my guests, keep the lights on, and get myself a coffee every now and then if we're doing well. True indie podcasting, ladies and gents. It is a brilliant but increasingly difficult thing to pull off in this age of mega podcast companies with their pinball machines and their fancy offices. So do consider helping little old me keep this little old thing ticking on. And look, if you can't or you won't do that, that's fine. But please give me a 5-star rating and a nice written review over at your podcast medium of choice. And the final thing, if you hear this noise, by now you probably know it denotes wisdom. Check out the show notes for more information on a thing we've been talking about. Right, on with it. I went to see Joel just north of London, near Luton Airport, where Joel flew out of as an airline pilot all them years until he quit because of climate change. So, if you're wondering what goes through your head when you get to the point of doing something like that, how it builds up, how you live with it until you can't live with it, well, you're about to find out. I hope you enjoy. I think this is a brilliant, brilliant chat. What is the thing you have done? What's your inspirational act? I know what it is. The listeners might know.
I think you're talking about the fact that I used to be a pilot and I'm not anymore.
Yeah, airline pilot.
Yes,
Used to be.
That's right, yeah.
But you didn't get fired. Like you,
No.
You didn't do something awful and get the boot, and that's inspirational. You left of your own free will, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm hesitating there slightly because I didn't quit. I didn't hand my notice in and walk out. There were times when I considered doing that, and essentially I was advised not to by a lot of people who knew what was going on with me. Go to the left here.
Oh, okay, lovely. Oh, this is very nice.
It's a lovely wood.
I'm glad you're here. I'd be immediately lost.
I've got lost in this wood a few times, but not recently, and I won't take you anywhere. I don't know exactly where we are.
Very good.
Yeah, it was essentially I was encouraged to see it as not my responsibility, not my fault, to just quit because I couldn't do the job anymore. And that if I couldn't do the job anymore, for essentially psychological reasons, a psychological reaction to the cognitive dissonance was the phrase that I was presented with as explaining the discomfort I was feeling. Then, yeah, there's possibly nothing I can do about that.
Well, so the idea being that you'd got to the point as a kind of mental health issue where you were as unable to carry on doing the job as if you'd have a physical health issue that would stop you being able to fly.
Yeah. So I suppose the choice I made, if I didn't choose to stop flying by quitting the job, I think the choice I made was to properly dig into the issues, which I knew that I'd only been skirting around and putting sticking plasters on for certainly for a year or two, and probably for a lot longer than that in smaller ways. I stopped flying just over a year ago because the stress had built up to the point where it was impacting my sleep, my mood, all kinds of things. And we're given some training anyway in looking out for the signs when it's you're possibly not fit to fly.
Just for all sorts of reasons, presumably. Like, you might just be having shit in your personal life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and a bit of training or advice that was possibly most critical to me was I remember being told when I was a brand new first officer, some of these old captains, they've often got quite a lot going on in their personal lives. You might well meet a captain that's just going through a divorce or something else like that, and they might well look a bit frazzled. They might well say something like, I'm fine, I come to work to get away with it, I'm okay, let's just get on with it. And what do you do in that situation? And of course the right answer is you say to them, sorry mate, I don't think you're fit to fly, I think you should go home. If they're exhibiting signs of being stressed, being a bit distracted.
That's interesting. So there's a kind of culture of looking out for people because you've got a plane to fly with people in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you might not be the best person to recognise it in yourself. Mm-hmm. And so, as a brand new, fresh first officer with not a care in the world, you look out for these poor old captains that might be going through quite a lot, have quite a lot to deal with, and therefore not be in the best place to make rational decisions on a flight deck. And so I thought to myself, I think I might be becoming that captain.
Right.
So it's probably time to go and ask for more professional opinions on this. So I wrote an email to my aviation medical examiner and told him what was going on, and he said, "Yeah, I'll suspend your medical."
Just there and then, it was just like, that's it.
Just there and then, and then there were more investigations. Investigations is a strong word. I was quite well looked after by the company through that stage, but occupational health and have you tried this and that and all that kind of thing. But no, I didn't go flying again after that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like a lot of industries would probably benefit from having that level of attention paid to the mental health of the people that work in it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think aviation does well.
Yeah. Did you have anyone saying to you, "Here, Joel, you're not looking right to me"?
No, I didn't. So, hopefully I got out at the right time and, before something went wrong. When you turn up for work, when you're flying, you have to be, you can't just go home in the middle of the day. So you have to be pretty confident that you're going to get through the next 12 hours or whatever it is. And that's, normally I'm thinking about medical health with that. Am I coming down with a cold? If I feel like I probably am, then I say most other jobs, then you can go in and see how you feel in the middle of the day. But with flying, you can't do that. So you have to err on the cautious side. And yeah, the same with the mental health. I thought it's far better to, as I say, refer myself to someone else, to an expert to assess me. And I was expecting more of an assessment, to be honest. I was expecting a few more questions. I was expecting to have to go and see the aviation medical examiner, but nothing like that. I was like, yeah, okay, you're signed off, and that was it.
Well, I guess they can't take the risk, can they? It makes sense.
No, that's right.
Pilot who feels sketchy is a bad pilot. Yeah?
Yeah, it's not what the passengers would want, is it? No. Well, it was the increasing belief in my head that flying is not only doing a lot of harm to the planet, but it's unnecessary, unjustifiable harm. So when I started flying, I remember being asked actually by someone who knew me quite well. So you're going into flying. What do you think about the climate, environmental part of that?
The what?
Yeah. And I said yes, of course, yeah. It's an issue, but surely it's best to have a climate, environmentally conscious pilot flying the aeroplane than one who isn't. And right from the start of my career, I tried to fly the aeroplane efficiently.
Okay.
Partly thinking about climate and environment.
So that's the thing you can do, like in a car, you can just like use less fuel in how you fly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
By what, heading straight down as quick as possible, pointing at the ground and just seeing what happens.
Well, actually, I mean, you say that, but they call it descent management, but that's one of the ways that you can save fuel. And as you know, airliners are at their most efficient in the cruise and at their least efficient when they're flying near the ground.
Right.
So what you want to try and do is stay high for as long as possible, but not so high that when you do descend, you're absolutely diving down straight at the ground at, at 330 knots or whatever, because that's not very efficient either. So what you want is a nice idle thrust.
Well, presumably it's efficient until it isn't, right?
Well, yes, very true.
Yeah.
But what you're looking for is a nice idle thrust, gentle descent where you bring the power back to idle from your cruise level, and you keep it as close as possible to idle all the way down to the final descent.
Right.
And you can do that by trying to guess what route air traffic control are going to give you, judging the distance to go against the height that you've currently got. And it's quite good fun. I really enjoyed that. And
well, you say that's a climate thing, but presumably that just makes you the company like that, right? 'Cause
Well,
that's less fuel you're burning.
Yes. And now we're getting into efficiencies, which is kind of that became possibly, I was going to say the straw that broke the camel's back, but I think it's probably bigger than a straw. But I had this belief that although we stopped flying as a family on holidays in 2019, we agreed to do that partly for environmental reasons, partly because of the hassle of getting kids baby stuff, car seats, etc. through the airport. And as I was saying to you before, we did fly on a quick holiday in 2024 in October. And that was the first time we had done it for 5 years, and that was partly as a result of the conflict going on. I was flying for work every day, but saying to the kids, no, we can't fly on holiday. I thought, well,
bit incongruous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we probably should.
Yeah.
So we did take that trip, and that was the one. But I was thinking, okay, it's not my carbon footprint as the pilot, it's the carbon footprint of the people sitting behind me.
Oh, it's their fault.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I realise now that this is a classic big oil kind of argument.
Yeah, okay.
It's you're saying you want this stuff, we only provide it, it's not our fault.
It's not our fault. If I didn't do this, someone else would do it.
Exactly, you're asking us to dig it up and we're digging it up for you. What's the problem? Yeah. And so I was essentially doing that. Flying an aeroplane is more how I see it now, but how I was rationalising it to myself then was, yes, it's not my carbon footprint. And as a conscientious pilot, I can actually do quite a lot because we're getting through, tons and tons of fuel. And these little things that I can do to fly the airplane more efficiently actually are making quite a big impact. I can save, 100, 200 kilos of fuel possibly on each flight by adding together all the things we can do. Talked about descent management, but they're, reduced engine taxiing and other choices you can make.
And that probably did have an impact, right? If in reality somebody else would have been doing this that wasn't you, and at least for the time you were doing it, you probably did save some fuel.
Yes, but did that actually lead to less fuel being burnt in the long run? And so some scales fell away from my eyes when I saw David Morgan, the Chief Operating Officer of EasyJet, appear on a BBC programme called Cheap Flights in November 2024. And he was being questioned on exactly this problem. He's talking about the efficiencies, and he was, there'd been somebody else actually, another representative from EasyJet, looking at parts of the aeroplane that meant that the carbon footprint per passenger mile was coming down. They fitted longer wings, more efficient engines, increased the number of seats, lighter seats, all these kind of things, improvements they've made in the last 10 to 15 years. So EasyJet aircraft are getting more and more efficient. But overall emissions from the airline are continuing to rise, obviously with a blip through the COVID years, but they are...
Because more people are flying?
Because more people are flying, yeah.
Okay.
And the question was along the lines of EasyJet used to offset They stopped offsetting.
So that's like planting trees and stuff to make up for...
That's right.
Yeah.
And now they're investing in more sustainable aviation with a particular emphasis on hydrogen fuel technology, which is decades away from coming online. And so the journalist who was making the programme said, how do you rationalise that? You're not offsetting your current emissions, you're not going to get reductions from hydrogen fuel for decades, your emissions are continuing to rise, how can you be on a pathway towards sustainability? And the answer was that all that matters is to reduce each individual passenger's carbon footprint per mile, per flight, and that's what they're doing. And that seems so hard to justify to me, and it led me to think that it's all about expansion. And I thought, okay, these efficiencies that I thought were in line with trying to help the climate, I think are just helping to make tickets cheaper,
right,
or airline profits greater, so they can invest in more aircraft. And I had a suspicion that was the case, and then I read There Is No Planet B by Mike Berners-Lee, and he wrote about the Jeavons Paradox, which is that exact thing, that when you become more efficient at using a resource, you actually end up using more of the resource because the resource is more useful to you, the more efficiently you can use it.
Yeah, so that's the idea, right, that like if your car gets more energy efficient, you've then got less of an incentive to drive your car less. So you just go further in your car. End result, same amount of nosing, but you can tell yourself that you're being environmentally friendly by driving a more efficient car.
And potentially an even greater amount of nosing, which is a word I've heard you use a lot and I've never come across it before.
Good words, yeah. Well, you know, nosing stuff up. I think it's out of Only Fools and Horses. That one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think that's where it came from.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure.
Good.
Somewhere, so the common parlance down my way.
Turn right here. Yeah.
Oh, Dale, don't patronise me. Look, I nosed it up and that's all there is to it.
Was it as simple as that you were like, you had in the back of your head for ages, like, I am worried about this climate stuff, but I'm doing something about it, and then what, you literally read a book and you changed your mind, or was it more gradual?
It was definitely more gradual, but it was these stories that you tell yourself to justify what you're doing, and tell yourself it's okay, when parts of yourself are telling you that it's not. And that idea that I could do a little bit on each flight, when that got taken away from me, that was really difficult to justify it beyond that point. Other ways, I suppose, that I had tried to justify it were spending the decent income that I was earning on becoming more efficient at home, less of a carbon footprint myself, electric car, solar panels, all that kind of thing. I remember at one point, just over a year ago, or a year and a half ago, getting ridiculously excited by finding a plastic-free shaving kit.
That's the answer. That's what we've been looking for all this time.
I could not understand why I felt so happy about that, and thought, well, maybe this is the next thing that I need to just keep on doing. I need to just keep on finding ways to make tiny little impacts, and as long as I can keep doing that, then I can carry on flying. And I think that just seemed so ridiculous to me in that moment that I couldn't not ask myself,
what the hell am I doing?
Wow. Other things triggered me as well. So I came across this group called Safe Landing, and that was, as I said, I found them through a roundabout kind of route. My wife Sarah said that she'd come across this guy called Dan, who was used to be a pilot and was now working in helping the veterinary industry with human factors, and he had stopped flying on environmental grounds, and so I started talking to him and getting his thoughts. He didn't encourage me to stop flying at all. He helped me to try and find ways that I could bring my environmental conscience to work.
Oh, fascinating.
Because
Yeah, all right.
what I'd been doing was just really separating it. I started to feel really not very proud of my job at all and not like what I was doing. But I also thought, this is what I do, this is what I've trained to do, I've invested a lot of money in it. I'm not going to be able to earn anything like this kind of income in any other industry, and I think pilots can feel quite trapped in that way.
Yeah.
I think there are transferable skills from flying that you can take into other walks of life, but a lot of what we do is pretty specific.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, I was feeling a bit trapped in the job, and I was thinking, okay, well, I've made my bed, I've got to lie in it, and do whatever I can. And this turn left here.
Oh, this is nice.
Yeah,
New meadow.
Another meadow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he maybe leaving my environmental conscience at home and just kind of going into work and being a machine isn't really going to work for me in the long run. And now that I don't believe that flying efficiently is going to make any positive difference, unless there is, it would work if there was a cap on flights. Then of course it would work. But as long as there's unlimited expansion, then it won't work. Then there has to be something else I can do at work to make me feel that I can justify carrying on in this job. So things like bringing the topic up with other pilots, doing what one of the other founding members of Safe Landing, Finley, had done at Rolls-Royce. So he started to express his concerns about the direction that Rolls-Royce was going in terms of sustainability, and he set up a working group and lunch and learn and things like that. So maybe I could do something similar at work. I tried it and I found it really uncomfortable. I didn't get very negative responses when I spoke to people in person about it. But I didn't do that very much at all. You are well advised to try and avoid controversial topics with the guy that you're flying an aeroplane with.
No politics,
Exactly.
no religion,
Yeah.
no climate crisis.
Exactly, yeah. So the couple of times I did it, it was with somebody that I already knew pretty well. It tended to be towards the end of the day. Let's go that way. And I would have to find an uncontroversial way in as well, such as accidentally coming across something climate related in a newspaper article or in an aviation magazine or something like that. And,
Did you watch that David Attenborough programme last night?
Yeah.
When he was talking about the death of everything. What do you think about that, Brian? Like that? Is that how you do it?
That kind of thing, yeah.
Right.
Maybe slightly more subtle.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not that you couldn't have one-to-one conversations, but the kind of culture of being a pilot, you just couldn't get that in.
Yeah, I found it really uncomfortable, and that's partly me. I think other people might well have made a better job of it, but I'm pretty conflict averse, and I found myself when I did it, it never got into an argument, but I felt so tense about it that I just couldn't keep on doing it, not on the flight deck anyway. So I use WhatsApp.
Very good. Yeah. The best place for all passive-aggressive communication.
And there was a bit going on about airport expansion and government approval, and I put a message out on WhatsApp saying, do we think that airport expansion is necessarily a good thing, even from the point of view as pilots? Is all this expansion creating a bubble, an aviation bubble that might burst?
Oh, okay, that's an interesting way in. Yeah.
Well,
right.
this is a point that Safe Landing makes as well, saying that the way that flying is going is unsustainable.
Like just in its own terms.
In its own terms, yeah. I mean, partly because of the environmental impact, but they're not. In this sense, they're not talking about it's unsustainable from a planetary point of view. It's saying because flying has such a bad impact, and it's so difficult to decarbonise, that at some point it's going to get cut back. Probably not as dramatically as it was during COVID, but that just went to show how easily flying can stop.
Right.
If there is suddenly wide consensus among the among global leaders that it needs to stop.
Yeah. Well,
And so we're much better off slowing down now than growing and growing and growing.
but then, of course, the existence of a very large aviation industry makes it less likely that global leaders will conclude that in the first place, right?
Yes.
It's one of the problems with that argument, I think.
It is, yeah. So the bubble could grow and grow, and I think it does have to burst at some point. It can't carry on at the rate of expansion that is currently happening.
I mean, current world events are doing a pretty good job of
Well, yeah.
showing what could happen. So we're recording this at the time of rampant jet fuel costs. Like, what, they've doubled or something, I think, at least in Europe in the last couple of months after Donald Trump started dicking about in the Middle East. So, it didn't take much of that happening for these planes to just become out pricing people out, And then what?
Yeah.
Well, then there'll be calls for subsidies and all sorts of stuff, but, you can't keep doing that, can you?
Yes, I mean, there's already no tax on jet fuel. How much more subsidised can it be?
None more subsidised. Well, I suppose you can give it away. So do you get a sense that there are other people, other pilots, just in your, in day-to-day pilot land, who were similarly kind of putting to the back of their head what you were putting to the back of your head for all that time?
Yeah, I think there has to be, for various reasons, but I don't think there was anything particularly unusual about my own position on climate as a pilot for at least the first half of my flying career, so it was about 13 years long, so for the first 7 years. I think I had concerns about the climate, but didn't particularly link them to aviation. I had a lot of faith in the grown-ups, not to let it get out of hand.
Oh, those guys.
And, yes. This is the society we're in. We fly. At that point, the first half of my career, we were flying lots on holiday as well. We were getting on with it, and it's up to them to sort it out. In the meantime, we're just going to, do our jobs, fulfil our roles in society. And my role is to fly aeroplanes, and the governments will sort the rest out and not let the world collapse. But I think that was one of the things that crept up as time went on. So these things gnaw away at you more and more, and you're aware that you've seen David Attenborough documentaries, David Attenborough again, in the 2010s, where he'd say things like, the signs are really bad, these things are happening, but if we act now, then we still have a chance to save it. And then you're aware that it's 10 years down the line and we haven't acted. We are still emitting more and more every year. We are not doing what was necessary, and therefore surely bad things are going to happen, and they are happening.
They are happening. Well, I was reading just this morning that in Mexico, where the World Cup is going to partially be, everyone will know this by the time you record it, they're stopping school 6 weeks early because there's a World Cup coming up, but also because they've just got a colossal heat wave happening.
Right.
Like, they've gone, it's too hot to educate our kids now. That's it. That's just that's just one example, right?
Yeah, and some of the things you see from the flight deck as well. This is something that.
Oh, that's interesting. I was going to ask you about that. You can literally see
wildfires.
Wow.
You can see not as much snow on the mountaintops as it feels that there should be, and there was maybe 10 years ago. Flying over the Alps.
Oh God. Yeah, presumably where a glacier, you might have seen there was a glacier there 10 years ago, and then that's not there anymore, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to look quite carefully, I think, but you do get the sense. You look down at these glaciers, and they are shrinking as well.
Yeah.
So it's the knowledge. It's even if you don't have a photo of that glacier from 10 years ago, and then another one by comparison, you know that it's happening, and you think, that glacier does look a little bit on the small side.
God, I mean, that could be a radicalising thing in itself. When astronauts go into space and they talk about the thing called the overview effect, that's what it's called, isn't it? Where you look at, apparently you have to leave Earth to do this, but you look at Earth and you go, oh, that's quite precious and delicate, maybe we should protect that. I guess you're talking about a version of that.
Yeah, I think
except
so.
You're causing it.
You do get a great view from up there, and the beautiful things that you're used to seeing, like winter landscapes, flying over a a winter landscape in Sussex and Kent, and I used to fly out of Gatwick, and then when I was flying out of Luton, you still fly over those areas, of course, all covered in snow, and it wasn't all that uncommon that you could go through a whole winter and not see that at all. In the last couple of years that I was flying.
Wow.
And the floods as well. Rather than seeing snowy landscapes, you're seeing rivers that have burst their banks because we've had heavier rainfall than since records began, and it's laid out in front of you. You can't deny it. When you see it with your own eyes, and you can see it from ground level as well. But I think from up at 20,000-30,000 feet, you do get a different perspective. And wildfires is another thing as well. You see the smoke from wildfires, especially flying over Portugal and Spain. And sometimes you think how early in the year it started. Is that a wildfire already? It's you can't completely ignore it. It's there. It's in your face, and
except you can ignore it, right? People must ignore it. Pilots must ignore it. People who look out the window in the planes must. We do ignore it. That's exactly what we do.
Your brain on climate.
Welcome back to Your Brain on Climate. I'm Dave. And in this episode, I'm out for a walk in the woods with Joel Walker, the airline pilot who quit because of climate change. Now, from the point of view of culture and psychology, which is what this show is about, this is a fascinating, sad, and yes, inspiring chat. I'm about to do something I don't normally do, because this isn't really a show about numbers or the statistics behind like carbon emissions or graphs or trajectories or climate change. You can listen to other boring podcasts for that boring stuff. I'm joking, it's important. You take my point. But I did just want to chuck in a little bit of context about why Joel was so worried about the harm flying causes in the first place. So, here in the UK, flying causes something like 8% of our total emission of greenhouse gases. Is that a lot? Well, these days it's more than the emissions that come from generating electricity in this country, because our electricity system is getting greener and greener. And scientists estimate that actually that 8% could be about twice that in terms of its warming impact because of contrails, the fluffy lines in the sky that the planes leave behind. That's where hot exhaust air coming out the bum of the plane mixes with cold sky air at altitude and it forms clouds. Those clouds bounce heat, infrared anyway, back down to Earth. So it's got a climate impact. It's not the biggest thing, but it's a big thing. And it's not about the direct impact alone either, because there's a justice element to this. Taking a flight is one of the most carbon-intensive things that anyone can do. A return flight from London to New York, which will take you in terms of activity much less than a day, has about a bigger carbon impact as the average person's car uses up in a whole year. And as Joel has already alluded to, unlike emissions in many other bits of the economy, aviation's is going up. Even though the planes are getting more efficient, more and more people are taking to the air. And something that particularly exercises campaigners for less flying, like Joel is now, is that flying is disproportionately done by wealthy people. 70% of all the flights in the UK are taken by just 15% of people, who tend to be more well off. Some of them take a lot of flights. I'm sure everyone knows someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. That's all right, no judgment. But look, globally speaking, most people never fly at all. So it's a particularly egregious example of the unfairness of climate change. A really strong case of something being overwhelmingly done by the richest in a very short space of time, which impacts everyone. And then you've got behind that a whole advertising industry propping it all up. And that gives you an industry of massive clout. And it makes the problem technologically difficult to solve and politically difficult to solve as well. So little wonder then that Joel, sitting at the front at the controls of one of them carbon belching machines for well-off people to go on holiday, might have found it a little bit hard to swallow.
Father, that sermon today, frankly, it bored the arse off.
Now, That all sounded a little bit preachy, and that's why I don't do that kind of stuff normally. This ain't that sort of show, right? And there's a reason for that, which is I am, like you probably, a colossal hypocrite. I have certainly flown more than my fair share in life, for business and for pleasure. I'm a bastard. You're a bastard. Let's just get out of the way and then we can move on. Indeed, look, like, here you go. I'm just about to admit this to Joel. I'm going to admit it to you now. It's been a few years since I've been in a plane, but, well, there's no other way of saying this. I'm just about to get on one. Can I say this now, get it out of the way? 10 days from now, me and my good lady wife are going on a plane. And then 17 days from now, we're coming back on one. Only to Europe. I say only, but this is what I'm doing. Look what I'm doing. I go, it's not that far, you know. And then I'll say another thing in a minute, which is, well, we haven't flown for 4 years, you know, which is also true. And then I'll say the other thing, which is like, yeah, I know, but we're vegans, you know, and we cycle around and we don't own a car. And we start to do this, don't we? Start to go like, oh, yeah, I am doing that bad thing. That is the thing I'm doing. But other people are much worse than me, you know, and come on, you know, it's not fair to sort of pick on me. Other people go, and it is true, I know quite a few people who fly all the time, like 7, 8, 9, 10 times a year they'll have a little holiday, little breaks. There was a thing in the news the other day about, BBC News got a load of flack for this, but they were covering, what's it called? You probably know what it's called. People who, like, for a day will go and fly somewhere for a day trip.
Yes, I know what you mean. I can't think of the word for it.
But that thing.
Some extreme day trips or something like that.
So what I'm doing, like, I suppose, a flying-focused version of the thing that all of us do all the time in life, which is I can't look straight at all of my impacts on the world. Because then, you know, where do you stop? We're all hypocrites. We're all, like, part of this problem, particularly in the West, right? We're all doing stuff. The impact even of my supposedly kind of green lifestyle, flying notwithstanding, is way more than the planet can bear, right? So we just can't look at it straight on, I think, and then make all sorts of excuses to ourselves and push to the back of our head the little voice that's going, yeah, but if everyone did what you did, we really are screwed, mate.
That was a really strange experience for me. It was like walking along listening to a podcast, and
Oh, very good. Should say that Joel's a listener and a supporter of Your Brain on Climate. If you want to be like Joel and potentially meet me for a walk in the woods, you can go to patreon.com/YourBrainOnClimate and chuck in a few quid, as Joel very kindly does, which is even more kind because he doesn't have a job. Well, not the job he did have anyway. Were you quitting flying because to do so would have less impact on the planet, versus because you were just like, I don't care whether it does or not, I just can't do this anymore?
it was both, I suppose. I couldn't carry on doing it. I couldn't carry on doing it personally because of the impact it was having, and therefore physically, mentally, I just couldn't.
Sleep.
I couldn't carry on. I couldn't sleep. I was, I was really starting to shrivel up, I think.
You don't look shriveled now, may I say. You look unshriveled.
Yes, I feel less shriveled. It was, I think I got there was a moment when I looked forward to the moment I retired and imagined myself looking back on my career and trying to work out how I would feel at that point. It's up this way. And part of this came from looking back at examples from history. You know, we're quite critical of people who, you know, bad things happened in history, and we are critical of people who played a part in it or stood by and did nothing even though they knew bad things were going on. And I realised that almost anything about that was starting to become triggering. So, you know, I couldn't watch episodes of Hello Hello without thinking that, you know, these people are all heroes. You know, they're all doing their little bit very, very bravely.
You know it's not real, right?
Really? No. Oh, that's. It kind of is, though.
I suppose it is.
It's you know, there were these, the people in the French Resistance and other resistance movements in the Second World War. Just being incredibly brave. It was so easy to just put your head down and live the quiet life, try not to get on the German soldiers' nerves, and look away
have affairs.
when bad things were happening.
Have affairs with your waitress. That's what I seem to remember from Alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Waitresses,
exactly.
plural.
Brilliant show.
Great show. Very, very contemporary, very up to date. Good reference.
Yeah, sorry about that. I do quite like 70s and 80s sitcoms. Anyway, but yeah, I didn't get enjoyment from watching it anymore because I felt like I was not living out my life in the way that I had hoped that I would, as being someone who would not just let bad things happen because it was too uncomfortable to do anything about it. It's up this path now.
So you felt complicit,
Yeah.
and that complicity was a problem.
Yeah, and I realised that I was starting to kid myself, going back to that plastic-free shaving kit. I was like, you really are kidding yourself by getting excited about this kind of thing. It all added together, and there was a moment when I thought, okay, I can't pretend I don't know about this. When you look back on somebody, maybe a heroic person from the past, but then their story is tainted because they had some racist views, or they were complicit in slavery. All those great things that they might have achieved in their life are very much tainted. I've listened to another podcast. Sorry.
Not good enough.
What was it? Oh, Evil Genius.
Yeah.
Where comedians, a panel of comedians, look back on a famous person's life. Not sometimes animals and sometimes fictional people, but generally famous people from history, and look at their legacy. And what would come up quite regularly was these bad things, as we'd look at it now in our enlightened times, and saying, well, can we really call them heroes when they had that opinion and did that?
Oh,
and
like
were complicit in that?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about slavery around that, isn't there? Where, like, say, people who, I don't know, for example, built zonking great chunks of cities in Britain, built libraries, built a lot of the kind of civic infrastructure of Liverpool and Bristol and places like that, who also were massive slave owners, right?
Yeah.
Can you
separate?
Can you separate those things?
Yeah, and the judgment seemed to fall in what did they know, or what were the standards of the time, and how were they versus the standards of the time? Were they average, worse than average, better than average? And to what extent could they have been aware?
Yeah.
And well, I certainly couldn't pretend not to be aware.
Yeah. Pretty hard not to.
Yeah, exactly. That ship has well and truly sailed. So what am I doing now? Well, I am carrying on with what I was doing because, well, I'm trying to make excuses to carry on doing it because I want to. In the sense that it's my job, to think about leaving the job and going and doing something else. I still enjoyed the flying, not all aspects of it, but I enjoyed sometimes just the physical flying of an aeroplane, and of course feeling that I
bet it's amazing. Can I just digress for a second? Yeah. I bet flying an aeroplane is sodding amazing, isn't it?
Sometimes it really is, yeah. Sometimes it's the views. Sometimes there's
buttons,
quite an interesting bit of flying,
yeah.
And yeah, of course, there is the prestige that comes with it. There's people asking you what's your job, and you say I'm a pilot, and they go, oh, that's amazing.
Do you ever have moments when were flying a plane, where you go like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I don't mean from climate reasons, but just like, this entire tin can is only up here. I presume there's a few safety nets, but it's only generally up here because I'm pushing these buttons on this box here.
Yes, yes, yeah. It does. It feels pretty surreal when you think about how small and thin the tube is, and how close you are to, air outside that is unbreathably thin and minus 40 degrees, and rushing past you at 500 miles an hour.
I know of at least one friend of mine who regularly listens to this podcast whilst getting onto a plane. And as I said, we're about to get on a plane, and my wife is a very nervous flyer, so I might tell her not to listen to that bit.
44, so classic midlife crisis territory.
Well, I didn't want to mention the MLC words. Now, I speak as someone who's had at least one midlife crisis, right? Possibly even two. Does it feel like, does anything of what you're going through, has anyone gone, midlife crisis, mate, that's what that is?
Yeah, not to my face massively, but I do
bet they have
feel,
behind your back.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I feel that so heavily, I'm afraid. Yeah.
And and you can feel like a cliche, can't it? Like, so I had not the same, right, but like 7 years ago now, 6 years ago now, I was doing a job which, although broadly in the scheme of things, people would look at it and they would go, that was a greeny job. I just had a moment, like, again, not the same thing, of waking up and going, I feel this is not making a difference. Like, this is just taking money to do some stuff and it's not making a difference. And a really strong sense of like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but can't do that no more. And I realised that, like, kind of is what a midlife crisis is, right? Like, if you get to be about 35, 40, and you don't in some way look at your life and go, is this still what I thought I wanted to be doing? Is this still right? Am I still doing it? I kind of think you're not paying attention. Do you know? I think they get bad press, midlife crises, really.
Can be a really powerful force for good things.
I mean, you don't have to like buy a Ferrari and, but a bit of reflection on who am I now at this point in my life? And do I still think the same things that I thought? Am I still, what do I want to do for the declining bit of my life? And that's the wrong way of thinking about it, but you know what I mean?
Well, it's the awareness that, you're halfway through, probably.
If you're lucky.
Exactly, if you're lucky, yeah. And also, for me, young kids. So I was in my late 30s when my children were born. And so, yeah, it's a reset of things that you think about. I think that was another of the many factors that all played into me having essentially a moment of crisis that peaked about a year ago. You have climate anxiety, I suppose, but it's not a mental health illness. It's a rational response to a threat, and so there is no cure for it. Apart from fixing aviation, maybe, in my case.
I had an episode with Geoff Beattie, who's written a book all about climate anxiety, a few episodes ago now. I imagine you've listened to it, given that you talk about climate anxiety, and he was saying, like...
It was one of the first ones I listened to, actually. I can't remember it very well.
And if I remember the gist of it,
it was very good.
Like, the thing that sorts out the climate anxiety is one of two things, which is either there is no climate change anymore, so nothing to feel anxious about, or you get yourself in a position of at least feeling like you're active and doing something as opposed to sort of paralysed and not doing something.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what you've done. You've taken a decision. You're like, right, I'm out. That's it.
So we talked about the length of travel and holidays and that kind of thing, and part of the reason why it didn't feel like any massive sacrifice for me to say I don't think we should be flying on holidays. Maybe we should give it a break for a bit, because I'd always enjoyed our local holidays more anyway.
Yeah, you can drink the water, can't you?
It's partly that. I think it's partly this for me. I quite like adventurous holidays. I've always been very much into sailing and walking and other outdoor activities, and I just feel so much more comfortable doing those things in places that I'm familiar with. So it's not only go on holiday locally, but it's also, I really enjoy going back to the same place regularly.
It's easier to relax. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, me and my wife talk about this sometimes, about when you go, this is how one can slide into late middle age quite easily, but when you go back to a place that you love, you kind of relax immediately, right? You're in holiday mode the second you get there, which you don't necessarily get if you're in a place where, for good reasons, it's all new and novel and exciting and everything, but it's not the same qualitative experience necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. And we've done our bits of global travel. We had a 2-week holiday in Vietnam a few years ago before kids, and did the safari thing in East Africa about 15 years ago. And they were great experiences, but they probably weren't even the holiday I enjoyed most that year.
It's going to be Centre Parks in Luton, isn't it?
It wasn't that either, but it was, it was going somewhere like the Lake District or Norfolk, which is where my wife comes from, because it was more relaxing. I felt like I would really get to know a place and feel comfortable there, and the more you get to know a place, the more you dig into it, the more you learn to love it. And I think there is a huge amount of joy to be got from much slower travel, and people talk about train travel, but maybe even travelling by train is too fast. And yeah, I mean, if flying was literally a free option that we could do without causing any harm, then fine. Let's if you want to, that is genuinely where you get your most joy from holidays, is by whizzing around the world from one place to another, ticking it off the list, hardly scratching the surface. Then that's great. That's it's not harming anybody. But the fact is that it is, of course. And given that we know that is a thing, how about trying to work out whether we could have just as much fun, if not more, with slower travel, more local travel. Even if you go, I'm not saying don't go by aeroplane, but I'm saying what are you looking for from your holidays? Are you looking for a beach holiday? Do you have to fly 2,000 miles for a beach when there are perfectly good beaches? A 500-mile plane ride away. We fly over beautiful places on our way to other beautiful places, and you get a great view of them out the flight deck window. Yeah. You look down on beaches in northern France and places like that. What about having a holiday there? Be saving literally tons and tons and tons of fuel.
And your subjective experience will be the same. I think it's important, isn't it? It's like you will have as good a time.
Yeah,
probably.
Maybe the weather wouldn't be quite as good.
Yeah. And so that's what you're doing now, is encouraging people towards that.
Yes. So yeah, I've put together a website and recorded a few amateurish podcasts, all under the name of Look Near First. So the idea that whatever you are looking for from a holiday or an adventure, see if you can find it closer before looking further afield. See what's there. If you genuinely can't find it, then go where you need to. But just be mindful, I guess, of the fact that the further you go, the more harm it does. And if that's okay and it can be justified, then that's okay.
And how do you feel about your past flying self now? Do you feel kind of ashamed, or have you got some compassion for that, geezer?
I've got compassion for it. I can't beat myself up about it at all, really. I feel proud of the achievement. I think in a lot of ways it did suit me quite well. I did an adequate job. I was never an outstanding pilot at all, but I was an adequate one, and just being an adequate pilot is...
Any big crashes?
...is an achievement. No big crashes.
No big crashes. Good. No major crashes.
No major crashes. No.
Sound like a perfectly good pilot.
My recent appearance in the Times was my first aviation-related appearance in a national newspaper. And yeah, I'm also, there's lots about aviation that I'm still proud of, and I think is really impressive. I think the way that we have learnt to fly aeroplanes safely is incredible, and I think there are huge lessons to be learnt from that. About the climate crisis, a lot of it is to do with psychology, human factors, and the fact that the designers and engineers have created such amazingly reliable aeroplanes that most crashes are caused by human factors. Pilots doing things that, on the face of it, when you look at it, seem weird and frankly terrible and irresponsible, but then when you unpick it, you just realise they're behaving like normal human beings, which is all any of us are. And it's largely because flying aeroplanes is not something that we evolved to do. And yeah, we are in many ways quite bad at it. We really have to learn how to be good at it. It doesn't come naturally in many ways.
No, we haven't evolved to fly a tin can 40,000 feet in the air or whatever it is, have we?
Exactly, yeah. It's some of it's psychological, some of it's vestibular. Our vestibular.
What's a vestibular?
Apparatus. So the your sense of balance and direction from your ears. Those ear canals with the fluids and hairs that give you a rough idea of what's going on even when your eyes are closed. They don't work when you're flying at hundreds of miles an hour. You can lose all sense of which way is up. And so you are told not to try and fly by the seat of your pants. You're told to trust the instruments, because the seat of your pants, your own feeling about what's going on will be lying. The instruments will be working. They are far more reliable than your own sense of what's going on. So yeah, we weren't designed to fly aeroplanes, and we didn't evolve to fly aeroplanes, and we didn't evolve to deal with threats like the climate crisis as well. A crisis that's happening on a global scale, almost imperceptibly slowly, is just not the kind of threat that our human brains evolved to deal with. And I think that is a large part of why we are responding to it so ineffectively. And if we can learn to fly aeroplanes safely, then I think we can apply the same kind of theories and learning to responding to the climate crisis. And maybe to some extent we are, but I think a lot more work could be done in that. So when I got command, as they call it, so when I swapped seats and moved into the left seat, got my 4 stripes, was the pilot in command of the aircraft, I moved on from that a little bit. So all that training was absolutely true, but then there's this other decision-making sense that comes in when you have the ultimate responsibility, I think. And I learnt to... So I've been told not to trust the seat of my pants to fly the aeroplane, but I paid more attention to what my gut feeling was telling me about situations. And when it felt like we might be taking an undue risk,
Right.
or something like that. And even if I could rationalise it and say, well, we're not breaking any rules here, the path that we're taking us on is not taking us any closer to a thunderstorm than we're allowed to go, or other situations along those lines that I could, on an academic level, kind of make a case for doing. But if it still felt in my gut that I was feeling uncomfortable about it, then as my experience grew, I put more and more faith in that gut feeling and took early decisions to divert, for example. And I think that came from experience of finding that when I diverted, I never ever regretted it. And there are a few occasions when I chose not to divert, or not to divert initially, and it got into a situation where I felt uncomfortable, essentially. Maybe I'd put us into a corner where I was hoping that things would play out well, rather than knowing that they would. And that is not a good position to put yourself in as the captain of an airliner.
Or as a citizen of planet Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
If I may detect a metaphor in what you're saying.
That's exactly, yeah. And so I think because I was putting more faith in my gut feeling as a pilot, maybe I paid a bit more attention to it on climate as well. I think that was another thread to all the factors that built up over those years. I swapped seats. I got my command in 2018. In 2019, lots of things started to happen, lots of momentum around climate change. Greta Thunberg, Flight Free UK campaign, Extinction Rebellion, all those things happening, and we think, they're kind of saying don't fly, and I think they've got a point. And then COVID happened, and to start off with, I was worried about my job, but I also paid attention to the news stories saying that this pause in flying is perhaps going to buy us an extra year to change things. And then when the restrictions eased and people started flying again, my relief at going back to work was tempered by a bit of a feeling that it's a bit of a shame that we're just going back to our old habits. And there was a sense that part of me wanted everyone to go flying on holiday so that I would be paid to do my job, and part of me wanted them to not, so that emissions would reduce. That was the start of as I say, that was about 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, 2019. And I think those were the first big seeds that never really stopped growing.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Your Brain on Climate, and a huge thanks to Joel Walker for taking me for a walk in the woods, for spending a huge chunk of his day talking to me, and for being a supporter of Your Brain on Climate. As I mentioned in the show there, Joel chucks in a couple of quid to help with the running costs of this esteemed organ, and you can too. over at patreon.com/yourbrainonclimate. And don't forget to give me a review and a share if you like this episode. It makes a huge difference for an indie podcaster to get the word out. Please drop me an email to hello@yourbrainonclimate.com if you've got any thoughts on the show. And I'm over at Instagram and TikTok and all those things. You'd find me if you can work the internet. If you want more Joel, do check out his podcast at Look Near First. There's some great stuff on there. Joel's just getting started, but already some cracking episodes, very much in the vein of this show, so I know you'll enjoy it. And if the whole cognitive dissonance theme of this episode is interesting to you, and it should be, because it's pretty core to stuff we've talked about a lot, well, check out, there's a specific episode in the back catalogue called Cognitive Dissonance with the wonderful Sarah Stein-Labrano, where she tells us all about how our brains do and don't deal with rumbling disquiet. Okay, I'll be back soon. Until then, maybe you've decided to quit your job or not, but whatever you've decided to do, look after yourself, and I will see you when I see you. Okay, bye? Bye. Goodbye. Bye-bye. No, you hang up. You hang up. Okay. Bye.